Alfred Naro.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and I rise to take a call on this bill. The Parental Leave and Employment Protection 6 months paid leave, work and contact hours amendment bill in its second reading. Just to note, the comments that were made by the previous speaker around the half of those, the figures are actually on annual. It's about 26,000. So he's absolutely. So it's even lower than that, lower than the 30,000. He's absolutely right. On average per year, that's the number that actually applied for paid parental leave. But Mr. Speaker, I want to start my remarks by taking up a point that when my colleague and friend Mark Mitchell came up and in his speech talked about the importance of the roles of fathers, that is just as important. And I know that Denise Roche spoke and called it mansplaining. Clayton Mitchell then went on and started bending on about this and saying that she was absolutely correct. Mr. Speaker, I have to say that it really does take away the essence of what Parliament is actually about, which is the equity of all to have an opportunity to debate this issue. And I think that's actually really important, just as it is for Mrs Suramoni to be able to do that, and I respect that. And I just think that there needs to be a little bit of respect that he had a view, he wasn't mocking anyone, he was giving his explanation, and I think that's just as important. Mr Speaker, I'll just say off straight out that on behalf of the, along with the government, we do oppose this bill, but we do support the intent of the member. I absolutely agree that what the member is saying around paid parental leave, but it's not about the aspect of, because the paid parental leave is an opportunity, it's a tool that's used by government to provide support where it is most needed at that point in time. And I, as the member has shared in her own story, that in raising children, that provision wasn't available there. And so I think actually in 2002, when it did come in, I would support that, and I believe that that actually was the right thing. The workforce had evolved, changes that happened, and so therefore the needs and the demands that are on families had been to the point where now, in most cases, and even today, mums and dads are both having to work. Caregivers are having to get into a situation where they need to provide for their family, and such as the consumer society we live in, and those are some of the demands. So the intent is what I actually do support. I think it's absolutely right, and the support that we can give. I'm not one of those who said that, well, just because we didn't have it, they shouldn't have it. I think actually I support the member in her comments that actually, as time moves on, changes happen, and for our own children and for our grandchildren, we hope that they will evolve to meet the demands and the needs that are there. And I think that's absolutely correct as well. So, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to then sort of just make some comments about that, because I think it's right. Look, people talk about finances and they talk about it's all about the money. But the reality is, in all of our families where we come from, budgeting is something that we do every single day. We make choices as mums and dads in our home, with the work that we are a part of, the income that we bring into our homes. We make a choice as to the types of food that we buy, the types of accommodation that we have, the vehicles, the things that we do on holiday, the types of clothes and shoes. We make decisions as families every single day on the budget that we have. It's disingenuous for the other side to say, you don't care because you don't want to give the money. Well, I tell you what, if that was the case in everyday homes, when children would turn around and say, we need to have the latest shoes, we needed the latest technology, then I tell you what, they could have the debate to say it's disingenuous. This government is being cautious and careful. It hasn't disagreed with the intent of the member, but it's saying this: as we budget what's appropriate, we budget appropriately. This government has done that. It has gone, and let's just see about where it went. And I know that the honourable member is in here. The honourable member Ruth Dyson is here. And then also we know that in 2007 she was also faced with a report that came from the Families Commission in which she had to make a decision. And I know that she's a wise person that had to make a decision with the constraints that were before her, and realised that in actual fact the Families Commission wanted to extend it all the way through to 13 weeks. So 13, what was it, 213, yeah. So anyway, it was an extension, I'll find it here. But the member was correct. Here it is, 13 months. 13 months, that's right. 13 months, I need to get it correct. 13 months. But the honourable member, as the minister at then, by, let's see, what was that? By 2015, right? So let's talk about 13 months, right? But let's talk about this point. The honourable member made a decision on the basis of what was affordable at that point in time, even though I know that the member over here Mr. David Seymour talked about the fact that they had surplus. They had ability to extend when they had the opportunity, but they didn't. Why? Because they made a calculated and a rational decision. So for the member to turn around and say to this government, when we don't have the excess of that surplus, that we should make that decision, we're making the same decision as that member made when she was the minister. She made a rational decision to go by incremental steps. Let's look at those incremental steps. In 2002, it was 12 weeks. In 2004, it was 13 weeks. In 2005, it was 14 weeks. 14 weeks. So let's just take that into consideration. It means that the member knew that by incremental, by learning, by developing, and by knowing that what's affordable, we should make our decisions. So to those that are listening on the outside who would try to take the comments from the member to say and criticise that this government doesn't care, it cares just as much as that member did in 2007, right the way to 2009, when it made the decisions that were appropriate, fiscally being responsible as the member thought that was appropriate as well. So that's very important. Here's another bit of information, because the member has also too talked about the nation is speaking. In fact, Mr. Ian Lees-Galloway talked about the fact is that, New Zealand is on our side. Well, he talked about the weight of submissions. So the member said we'd doubled the submissions since 2013. This comes from the departmental report, page number 4, and here's what it says in the top paragraph. The overview of submissions, 6,755 submissions. But out of that, 5,129 were formed submissions. That's right. Formed submissions. In other words, they were generated off a website, 26 websites that were there, they were set up there. That takes us down to 1,626. That seems to be substantive, doesn't it? 1,626. So we've gone from 6,755 down to 1,626, but then the report goes further on to say that out of that, those other individual submissions had little added bits to the sentences that made it slightly different. And Mr. Speaker, what it then got down to, so how many were individually classed submissions? 66. 66 submissions. So I'm just reading from the report. I wasn't in the select committee, I have to say, I didn't hear them, but when one reads from the report, it's got to be factual, okay? The report says there were only 66 individual submissions that could be classified. So let's break it down a bit. Well, it's in the report. Let's break it down. 62 submitters expressed support for the bill, 2 submitters opposed the bill, but inside that there were also another 2. But here's what gets interesting. One of those submitters was the Child Poverty Action Group. The Child Poverty Action Group neither supported nor opposed the bill, right? Yep, that's right, I'm being factual to the report, but this is what they said until there was enough evidence where they were taken into account the adequate recognition of the needs of all newborns. So to turn around and say that there's the weight of 55,000 submissions, okay, that all the organisations would support, you just have to say that may not be quite true. When it got down to 66, when it got down to 62, when it got down to 4 others who actually, and what was interesting, the Child Poverty Action Group actually did neither oppose nor support this. Mr. Speaker, you have to say, you have to question whether there is something inside of this. Mr. Speaker, I also just want to, in my few comments, I just want to deal with the facts. I just want to deal with the facts. The member then talked about the fact that even the businesses support this. Even the businesses support this. But Mr. Speaker, I'm reading from another report, and it's from the Ministry of Business and Innovation and Employment, the Parental Leave and Employment Protection 6 months paid amendment bill. It's the officials report, Mr. Speaker. And, surprise, surprise, we have comments here from the Business New Zealand who oppose the bill, okay? encourage the growth of, and this is what they do. Also, the New Zealand Retailers Association, not the bill in whole, but what they would like to do is to talk about the different parts that they feel are not appropriate. So the bill as a whole, the intent they support, but there are parts of this bill, which is to extend to 26 weeks, is not what they would support. There are parts around employment protection that they think is absolutely important. Mr. Speaker, I want to put that on record because some of the comments that have been said haven't been quite factual to what is actually. Mr. Speaker, on behalf of the government, we do oppose this bill.